Imagine it's late at night, on a quiet farm in rural Nebraska. The air is thick with the sound of crickets and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. But then, suddenly, the calm is shattered by an unearthly scream coming from the cornfield. A scream so human and filled with pain that it stops you in your tracks. You feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and your heart races with a deep sense of dread. But when you rush toward the sound, you find nothing. Just the rustling corn swaying in the breeze. This terrifying scenario unfolded in 1995, when two farmers working late at night in Nebraska heard screams emanating from their cornfield. They rushed toward the noise, but when they arrived, there was nothing there. The screams continued for over an hour, echoing through the field. But despite searching, the farmers found no sign of any living creature. The next morning, they discovered a perfect circle of trampled corn, but no footprints, no trace of any intruder, just the odd indentation in the crops, as if something had been pacing in a tight circle. The screams continued every year on the same night, leaving no explanation for what was happening. Was it a ghostly entity, an unknown creature, or something no one has ever been able to identify? In this video, we will dive into the chilling story of the mysterious Screaming Cornfield, a case that remains one of Nebraska's most bizarre and unsettling mysteries. Join us as we explore the haunting screams that have echoed through the fields, the strange findings, and the theories that continue to surround this unexplained event. It was a typical night on the farm in 1995. The two farmers had been working late into the evening, finishing their tasks when they heard something they couldn't explain. A blood-curdling scream echoing from the cornfield. The scream sounded unmistakably human, loud, agonizing, and filled with terror. It wasn't just a yell or a shout, it was a scream that struck to the very core of their being. The two farmers froze. They looked at each other, their minds racing. Was someone in trouble? Had an intruder gotten into the field? Or was someone hurt? Both men grabbed their flashlights and sprinted toward the source of the scream, which seemed to be coming from deeper within the cornfield. The sound continued to echo, getting louder as they ran, until finally they reached the spot where the scream had originated. But when they arrived at the location, they found nothing. There was no sign of human life. No one in distress, just the usual rustling of the corn, gently swaying in the night breeze. The field was silent, except for the sound of the wind moving through the stalks. The men were confused. They could still hear the faintest echo of the scream, but as they searched, they found nothing that could explain the sound. No footprints in the soil, no disturbed crops, no signs of any animals or people. The screams continued, echoing in the distance, but they were utterly alone. The men were no strangers to the sounds of a farm. They had heard the rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the cries of nocturnal animals. But this scream was different. It was distinctly human, filled with fear, desperation, and pain. There was no way it could be mistaken for the call of an animal. The scream was too clear, too deliberate, and too haunting. They were certain it had to be a person. But after searching the area, the men could find no sign of anyone, alive or dead. The night stretched on, the scream fading into the distance until it suddenly stopped. Just as mysteriously as it had started, the screaming ceased, leaving the men in stunned silence. The following morning, the two farmers decided to investigate further. When they made their way back to the cornfield, they were stunned by what they found. The area where the scream had been the loudest showed signs of disturbance, but it wasn't the kind of disturbance you'd expect. There, in the middle of the field, was a perfect circle of trampled corn, a tight, unnatural pattern of flattened crops. But what was even more unsettling was that there were no signs of footprints around the circle. The ground had been pressed down, but there were no human tracks or animal prints to explain the disturbance. It was as if something had been pacing in a perfect circle, leaving a mark but no other trace. They searched the rest of the field for any signs of entry, but the rest of the corn was untouched. The circle in the center stood out like a sore thumb, an eerie and unexplained anomaly in an otherwise untouched field. At first they thought it was a strange coincidence, but as they continued to search, they found that the scream and the perfect circle of trampled corn wasn't an isolated incident. The same thing happened the following year, at the exact same time, on the same night. The farmers were again working late, and the same horrifying scream echoed from the cornfield. This time, they were prepared. They rushed to the field, but again, they found nothing, just the rustling corn and the silence that followed the scream. The screams continued for over an hour, then stopped just as suddenly as before. Once again, they discovered a perfect circle of trampled corn in the same place, with no sign of anyone or anything having caused it. There were no footprints, no claw marks, no obvious explanation. This time, the farmers were convinced. Whatever was causing the screams, whatever was marking the corn in that strange pattern, was not a natural occurrence. It was something unexplained, and it was happening on the exact same night each year. As the years passed, theories began to circulate, but none could definitively explain the bizarre events. What was behind the strange screams and the mysterious circle of trampled corn? One popular theory suggests that the screams were the result of a ghost or some supernatural entity. The perfect circle of trampled corn could be a ritualistic pattern left by an otherworldly force. The idea that it occurred on the same night each year suggests a pattern tied to something beyond human understanding. Some even suggested the field could be haunted by the spirit of someone who had died there. Some paranormal experts theorized that the screams could have been the result of a psychic phenomenon, a residual haunting caused by past trauma or intense emotions tied to the land. Perhaps something had happened in the area long ago, and the energy was still being manifested through the screams. The trampled circle could be a symbol of an entity trying to communicate or relive its past. Skeptics pointed to the possibility of the screams being caused by some sort of animal, perhaps a large predator or an unknown species. But the fact that the sound was unmistakably human, and the circle of trampled corn was too perfect to be attributed to an animal, made this theory hard to accept. Some believed the source of the sound might be an unknown animal, a creature that lived in the field and could mimic human-like sounds. This theory gained some traction when researchers suggested that the unique conditions of the cornfield might provide a haven for something unusual and never before discovered. 5. A human prank. Others speculated that the entire phenomenon could have been the work of humans, perhaps local teenagers or pranksters trying to mess with the farmers. But the exact timing and perfect circle of the trampled corn raised doubts about this explanation. The phenomenon eventually stopped, but the questions remain. Why did the screams start? Why did they stop after the farmers took action? Was it a human doing it to torment the farmers, or something far more sinister? The mystery still lingers, with no definitive answers. Despite the many theories, the Screaming Cornfield remains unsolved, with no clear explanation for the phenomenon. Was it a ghost or unknown creature? A residual haunting or a strange animal behavior? We may never know, but the story of the Screaming Cornfield will continue to haunt the land, leaving a chilling legacy behind. To this day, the mysterious Screaming Cornfield of Nebraska remains an eerie, unsolved mystery. Whether it was the result of a supernatural presence, a strange animal, or an unknown phenomenon, The screams that echoed through the cornfields that night have left a lasting impression on everyone who hears the story. And though the phenomenon stopped after a few years, the mystery remains one of the most unsettling and unexplained events in Nebraska's history. Do you think it was a ghost, an animal, or something no one has ever identified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more creepy and unexplained mysteries.